Joining me now is esteemed geologist Professor Ian Plimer. Ian, let's start with the ABC's finance guru, Alan Kohler. He's insisting that the only way the Albanese government is going to get solar panels made in Australia is through tariffs, big ones. And we had just last week the Grattan Institute, the leftist Grattan Institute, similarly warning that the Australian solar manufacturing industry would never be able to compete with cheaper Chinese rivals, calling it a commercial bloodbath. The Albanese government is in deep trouble, Ian, when even the lefties are finding massive holes in their policies.
Well, they've got the policy wrong and they don't know any way out of it. Now, they've created very, very expensive energy. And that expensive energy relies on having solar panels and wind turbines come from a very cheap labour country, which has got cheap energy. So how do we become competitive? Well, we add a tariff. So what happens is we've already got an industry that is uneconomic. To try to make it economic, competitive, they add a tariff, which just adds more costs to you, the average electricity user. This is madness. Labor have never known how to balance the books, and they're demonstrating that beautifully.
Now, the Australian newspaper has revealed the extent of the Climate Change Department's frivolous spending. Naturally, much of the focus is on the billions wasted on renewable subsidies, but they're also wasting our money in other smaller ways, Ian, including $40,000 for sunglasses for extreme climate and almost $27,000 for a planning day for senior executive staff at a plush Canberra hotel. We also know they've gone big on transport. Let's not forget the lack of fallout and responsibility from that double private jet controversy. That seemed to die down very quickly, Ian, compared to, say, Bronwyn Bishop and the whole Choppergate saga. Where is the accountability here?
Well, there's none. Labor governments squawk and carry on about how when they're going to be in government, they will be transparent and they will have accountability. And as soon as they're in government, they close the doors. There's no transparency. There's no accountability. And here they have all of their fellow travellers going to a caviar and champagne day. And these people are so embarrassed by the absolute waste, they have to wear sunnies. So this has just gone from ridiculous to even worse. And this is very typical of those who have no idea. They're in there with their snouts in the trough. They're not paying the sort of electricity bills that people who are on an average or minimum wage are paying. These people out in voter land are hurting, and there's only one solution, is to demonstrate your agony with your vote.
Well, that is good advice, but we need the opposition to have a coherent policy and give the voters a real choice, because I would argue at the last federal election we had two parties, both with net zero policies. So I don't know where the choice was there. Now, nobody seems to have told India about coal being terrible and finished. Prime Minister Modi has just celebrated India's historic milestone of crossing 1 billion tonnes in coal production as it commits to a plan for a vibrant coal sector. Ian, China also seems to have missed the coal is bad and dead message. Its coal imports are climbing as its coal mining projects expand. It's like they care more about human progress and cheap, reliable energy and well-paid jobs than they care about net zero fantasies. What's going on in India and China, Ian?
Well, these are pragmatic governments. These are countries that are trying to grow. These are countries that have for generations been very poor countries. Now, India not only is growing its coal industry and it's mining coal in Australia, taking it to ports which are coastal and having generators right next to these ports, but they're actually starting a huge nuclear industry. They've just commissioned a thorium reactor. They have a type of reactor that can now burn the spent fuel out of a conventional uranium reactor, and they can burn this and India is going down the path of having a huge nuclear industry as well as having a huge coal industry, and China is no different. China is getting their coal deposits are getting deeper and deeper and deeper. That means they're importing more and more coal. They need this coal to grow. We are beneficiaries of that cheap energy. We are beneficiaries of the coal. And the coal that we sell China is being used to make solar panels, is being used to make wind turbines, and to put our coal mines out of productivity and put our coal-fired generations out of production. This is just madness. We should be looking at the cheapest energy that can be found. We are an energy-rich country, yet our two major sources of energy, uranium and coal, we are trying to ignore or wind down. This is madness.
It's self-inflicted madness, and we're going to have shortages shortly. They're talking about next winter having a gas shortage when we're on decades of reservian. We've got so much gas in this state, but there's no exploration.
Well, in Victoria, there is plenty of gas. I have seen the Wombat wells in the onshore Gippsland Basin. I've seen them flare. This means that there's gas there. Those wells, those 5 wells, are only a few kilometres from an existing pipeline. The gas coming out of those wells doesn't need to have mercury and carbon dioxide taking out of it. Victoria, in the eastern part of Victoria, has got a huge amount of gas. In the western part, underneath the Portland smelter, which is absolutely crippled with energy costs, there are gas deposits. There are gas deposits in the Otway Basin offshore. Victoria is digging its own grave. And to make matters worse, not only do you in Victoria have an appalling Labor government, you have an opposition that only seem to want to fight amongst themselves. They don't want to fight. What is happening in Victoria? And that is Victoria is going down the gurgler. The Victorian Liberals have a terrific opportunity to do something, and all they want to do is to fight over crumbs.
Ian Plimer, it's always a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you so much for your time tonight.